Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for attending Stephen's presentation from ZoomInfo of the Big Pivot. Um, we would like to go over some housekeeping things. So we are recording the session. So for those of you who it's your first rodeo, just make sure to close out your camera if you don't want to be recorded, and also to mute yourself. And we will be taking questions. Just drop them in the chat box. And then Danny, also with ZoomInfo, will be letting Stephen know at the very end of his presentation. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stephen Bryerton of ZoomInfo.
Thank you, Vivian. Hey, everybody. I appreciate you guys taking the time to join. Obviously, sales has shifted over a lot in the last few months. So today, what I figured would be helpful was to just give a baseline on, very brief on ZoomInfo, but most importantly, how we go to market, what we've learned from others in the space, considering that's what we support, how we've structured our team, how we structure our processes, how we think about data and measurement and lead all the way through to close and even beyond close as a customer. And I think that'll set the foundation for us, because the pivot then therein that we had to make was sort of very minor things like adding team huddles or buttoning up on a few processes. But we wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have the foundation. So that's what we're going to focus on today. As Vivian mentioned, I am Steve Bryerton. I'm the VP and head of sales here for ZoomInfo. I've been with the organization for 10 years and have seen it from 10 people all the way up to the 1,300 plus that we have today, and most recently off of our IPO. And due to that, this is sort of my first safe harbor statement in a presentation format, but nonetheless, we are going to take a look into ZoomInfo, who we are, how we go to market, and there may be some forward-looking statements based on this. And so if you do plan on purchasing ZoomInfo, please base it off of the current environment instead of any potential futures. And this is our full safe harbor statement here for your review. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to cover a ton of ground here today in the next 20 minutes. And really how sales and marketing knows and goes in sort of the space that we play in. It's changing constantly, and more so in the last 3 months than it ever has before. You think about your target market, and people have left. People have new email addresses. There's disconnected phone numbers. People have been promoted. There's new CEOs. People are researching solutions and how to come through this better on the other side. There are a few organizations that have expansion plans based on the tailwind that they're receiving. Some organizations are receiving funding. Some have major hiring plans, and a lot of them are experiencing challenges. And that's the motion that we fill. That's what we play and the space that we fulfill for our customers. We're capturing all of that intelligence across 100 million plus business professionals, more than 16 million organizations across the globe. And we keep that information updated in real time so that our customers can make better and better decisions. Now, because of that, we get a unique insight into how customers go to market. We support about 15,000 organizations. It's more than 250,000 users. And it's companies of all shapes and sizes, from manufacturing companies like Bevy to small retail organizations like the Comedy Store to the Boston Celtics and Golden State Warriors. No matter the size and scope and scale of the organization, what they all have in common is they're selling B2B. And so when we think about sort of the B2b framework and how organizations go to market, it's usually something like this. Now, all too often, the majority of our time gets spent on the very top of that pyramid, the go-to-market framework. We're constantly, probably as leaders, thinking about the strategy and planning, and do we have the right people, and how do we structure those team members, and the enablement and the execution. And then below that, we've purchased technologies to help us get there, from CRM to workflow to engagements and hopefully some analytics and measurements. But really, what's driving the entirety of the process is the intelligence layer and the data that you have, not only on your prospective customers and your customers in general, but also the data that hopefully you're capturing throughout the entirety of the process. And this is where we start to think of how we separate ourselves from others and how we personally go to market. And that at every stage, we are capturing, collecting, measuring, and optimizing the data all along. And so, there's the idea of lead scoring, and that's not terribly unique. Everybody is sort of doing some form of lead scoring, but it's something worth talking about because of how we envision lead scoring is very differently. So much so that we have like the measurement of a potentiality of a lead, the potential ACV, the potential of win rate on that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we take it to a very granular level, and we're doing this at every single step of the way so that we can measure, so that we can optimize, and therefore iterate. Now, what that looks like, and how, at the scale that we're doing this in today's world, we're capturing over 10,000 hot leads a month. That leads to over 6,500 demos a month. Those hot leads are being fielded by more than 70 inbound SDRs. They are specialized SDRs. In the SLA, we're responding to those 10,000 leads in under 90 seconds. So you go to our site today, you fill out a form, you raise your hand, you will be on the phone with one of our reps in under 90 seconds. And we decided to, and we've done this multiple times now, we measure the performance of groups at these conferences. So as we go through this process, just to sort of give you some benchmarks, at the last conference that we went to in person, we didn't get a chance to do it for this one, but this was a tech conference. These are PE-backed organizations. They are not small by any means. They have sophistication around that. You think about your hot leads and all of the money that you spent gathering those. Of the organizations that we tested, we submitted a form. We used a real person. We used our CRO, his real phone number, his real email address, filled out the lead. More than half of them had zero follow-up. Only a quarter responded within an hour. So nearly 80% of the organizations we reached out, we didn't hear from in an hour. And you sort of follow all the way down, and you see where we are at 90 seconds. Now, the only way that we're able to get there is not just by technology alone. You can't just go by technology. You have to have specialized people, you have to have processes in place, and you have to have a cultural commitment to making sure that that takes place. You have to educate the SDRs on why it's important, the benefits they're going to see. You have to have sort of top-down focus on being able to achieve that. And ultimately, there is a bunch of different stats. We probably are aware of all of them on just how important speed to lead is. So when we capture a lead, a lot of times it's blank. Most people get sort of various snippets of information. We use our own tool called Form Complete, and instead of seeing a relatively blank lead where now the sales rep didn't call because they didn't have a phone number, what our team members see is this sort of full visualization. They're getting everything from direct dial phone number, their mobile phone number, the technologies they're using. They're getting their industry, their employee counts, their title, their management category. They're getting all of this data instantly because we're using our own data layer. Now, the advantages that they have on this, and what starts to make us really unique in what we've really focused on, is how do we get that particular lead based on all of those data points to the right sales rep. So in the upper right-hand corner, you see a button there that's assigned demo to AE. When the lead comes into the SDR, they then pick up the phone, they call, they qualify, and when they're going to schedule that demo, they hit that assign demo to AE button. Now, based on all of those criteria that I mentioned, technology they're using, their size, the potentiality of the lead, so all of the factors, we then translate into the ACV, the average ACV that they should be spending with us. We know the win rate, how often we should win this particular lead, and we're marrying those two things, and that becomes our lead score. Now, we then take that and we divvy those leads out to the best performing reps. So based on the potentiality and the win rate of the lead, we then assign it to the AEs based on, again, their performance. So the best, highest quality leads, I want those going to my best reps, the ones that have the hot hand. And we're measuring the AEs on four things. It's trailing ACV over the last 3 months. They're trailing win rate. They're trailing average sales price. And then, in my opinion, the most objective measure is the ACV per created opportunity. So it doesn't matter that John closes 200,000 a month. If I had to give John 100 leads to do that versus perhaps Sue, who closes 175,000 a month, but I only gave her 50 leads. She's far more optimized and bringing more dollars back to the business. And this is transparent across the entirety of the team. So every AE knows exactly what they're being measured off of. It gets iterated, measured out, and displayed for them in one-on-ones at every single month after the month closes so that they can see the new band they're in. And then it also drives us so that they know and want to be better. No longer do we hear the, well, John does really well because John gets all of the best leads. We know exactly the win rate of the leads that they're supposed to be getting. We know the ACV that they're supposed to be getting off of those leads. And if they overperform or underperform, we're comparing them against their cohort of peers and their benchmark. So I know the difference between a fully ramped AE versus an AE that's been with us for more than 9 months. I know the difference in performance and score from a commercial rep to an enterprise rep. And I'm not comparing across the entirety of the spectrum. I'm just comparing them to the average within their particular cohorts and then against those particular leads. So this gives me a really even optimized way on how we route leads and, more importantly, how we drive revenue from those leads. Now, once we schedule a meeting, as good as we are at some of those things, we have to have a process and what we sort of call a go-back campaign. So about 75% of our leads show up and will take the meeting, but that 25% that didn't show up, there's still value in those. So we have a mechanism and we've optimized the process to go back against those particular leads with our SDRs. Wave 2 and Wave 3 is sort of what's called internally. And as a result of that, we're able to go back and pick up almost 30% of those that didn't show. And that leads every single month to about 1.2 million in annual revenue each and every single month from that go back process. So again, by measuring at every single point, what's our show rate? How many are converting into an opportunity? Who didn't show up? How do we go back after those? Now against those, when we did get them back, how often are they showing up, and so on and so forth. And we know the point at which it's no longer worth chasing. So if they don't show up 3 times, we're not going back. You start to get diminishing returns. So that's a little bit about some of the inbound process. How we structure the team and the employees and the talent is really important. And it's been a benefit that we've seen even throughout this process where now all of a sudden we're all remote. We were very much in-house. Now everybody is remote. Because of the processes and the diligence and the specialized roles that we've had, there has been no drop off. And more importantly, we've still been able to move people up throughout the sort of career pipeline, if you will, from inbound SDR, which is about a 1 to 4 month, depending on need and performance. They then get moved to a pooled outbound SDR. So where there are sort of many SDRs serving many AEs, as they continue on in their tenure, they become one-to-one paired with the most strategic account executives. I'll show that in a moment. And then ultimately that SDR team is a feeder system for our account executives from commercial, corporate, strategic, and strategic plus. But it's also a proven transfer opportunity into other areas of the business. So they're account managers, they're customer success managers, they've moved into operations, into product and product management. It becomes a talent pool for the entirety of the organization. We do this in relatively low-cost areas where the talent is really great. So we don't necessarily have to pay quite as much. And we're getting, if not more performance, at minimum equal performance from some of the tier 1 markets, if you will. So we've been able to sort of scale, again, based on bringing in the right people, giving them specialized roles, giving them the right technology, and then the process and commitment to making that work. We've been able to grow those professionals throughout time. Now, a little bit into the SDR motion, the inbound team is great, but if you want to continue to scale, at some point you will have to go outbound. You will have to pick up the phone and go after strategic and more targeted accounts. It also improves the quality of the pipeline because you're being more thoughtful about what you're going after. And this was a mistake that we made early on as we build out the team. We brought in SDRs. We had them focus both on inbound and outbound. And it was a very left brain, right brain thing. And we lost efficiency. We weren't optimized. And so every time we've done this and sort of bifurcated team members into specific roles, we've gotten incrementally better. And so now the pooled SDRs, again, many to many. So they're round robining as the leads they get set based on those different tiers and the quality of the lead. We also have the paired outbound SDRs. This is sort of the mentor-mentee relationship. They're paired with our top account executives. They get to learn the ropes, and then that is the team that ultimately works into promoting into account executives or into other areas of the business. Now, the underlying issue here is that, as I said earlier, it's that data and it's the intelligence layer. We are lucky enough to have all of these different data points. Again, we're using ZoomInfo in its entirety as the layer to make all of those decisions. And one of the biggest things that we have created is sort of this data lake, wherein we pull in all of this information. And some of the different data points are things like, were they a prior user? As soon as somebody leaves a VP at a customer and they go to another account, we want to be there and knocking on the door so they can bring in ZoomInfo with them. So we're pulling in all of these different data points. That's what feeds the quality of our outbound teams so that they're constantly focused on the right accounts. We pull in all of our intent signals. We pull in firmographics. We pull in our scoops. We pull in some of the behavior and prior usage stats. And then that informs our outbound motion. Now, because of all of this, in any sort of day in time, and we picked a random one here, I can give you or our executive leadership staff or our board the stats from start to finish. So on September 24th, we generated 568 MQLs. We set 238 demos. 160 of those were outbound. We created over 200 opportunities. We won 26, sent over 90, made 9,100 plus calls, and so on and so forth. And it's not the stats that are impressive. It's the ability that you have if you're focused in measuring all the way through the process, that you can get to those stats quickly, that it's, one report, it's 30 seconds, and here you go, as opposed to sort of being at a loss for words. And I have no idea why that day was successful. And since then, we've been able to set multiple days where we set more than 1,000 demos in a given day. Now, part of that is because we have a large total addressable market, and the other part is because we drive sort of large amount of leads. But the ability, again, for us to be really strategic about when we go outbound and how we're going to get there and how many calls do we need to make and how many emails do we need to send, having all of those things in line is a major part of that process. Now, once we take the demo, from there, we have a series of steps to help make sure nothing slipped through the cracks. So we have a post-demo follow-up. Once an account executive takes a demo, you get put into a demo follow-up drip. And again, this gets to be really specialized because I know their title, I know the technologies, I know the industry. The account executive enters their notes and changes things that then informs the drip to what they really cared about, the main pain point. And because of those, that leads to 80% open rates and more than 50% reply rates to keep the prospect engaged. And that all happens behind the scenes. The account executives don't have to do anything. As soon as they create the opportunity, that kicks off the series of follow-up sequences. At the end of that, it leads to a median sales cycle that's less than 30 days. We're generating between 1 and 1.2 million on average for most of our ramped account executives. And then we take all of that diligent focus in building the pipeline and we translate that into our customer side as well. So from account segmentation, it's not just the fact that, hey, these have a lot of employees or these have a lot of revenue and that's how we segment the accounts. It's also that there's a high potential to grow, or these accounts, based on their sales FTEs or their size or their potential, they are likely to just sort of be a stagnant customer, but still, and that demands different resources. So we have, again, that potentiality coupled with the size. We give that a score, but then we take it a step further and we think about, well, our account managers, that's great that they're focused now on certain segments, and they understand the potential and the opportunity. They understand how to strategically focus on those. But I can't have an account manager that has 70 renewals up for expiration in the month of July and somebody else that only has 10. So we're measuring and load balancing that through in an algorithmic way, so that as soon as a new customer comes on board, it measures and sort of dictates again to see who has the lightest book, who's in the right segment, and then therefore assign them that opportunity based on the expiration. So we take this process all the way through. So from AE to account manager, there's a series of steps, and again, more and more specialized team, from learning and development managers that do the training and the onboarding to customer success managers that are focused on adoption and driving success, and then the account managers that hold the bag for revenue. There's a specific onboarding plan. There's an integrations team. There's schedules around user training. There's post-training follow-up. And then we measure that all the way through, again, based on touch points, based on usage of the platform, based on predictive indicators. If they drop below a certain threshold based on their size and interaction, that kicks off a series of engagements. It alerts other leaders within the organization to focus on it. So we take that sort of diligent focus on data and iteration all the way through into our customer and account management as well. And we do this every single day of every single month of every single year. I know exactly, whether it's on the account management side or on the new business side, how much I need to close that particular day, how much pipeline I need to do that particular day, how that breaks out by manager, by director, by VP, and where we are month to date. And all of those analytics are visible to the organization. We're all speaking the same language. They all have the same dashboard. They're shared out every single night. Here was our pacing for today, for closing, for booking, for pipeline builds. Here's where we stand. Here's what needs to be done tomorrow. Everybody has visibility into that. And again, sort of that leads to a series of steps that, hopefully in 6 months from now, I'll be able to say that our net retention rate is higher, LTV to CAC is higher. We keep iterating on all of those things despite COVID. What we've just had to do now is add in more touch points, right? We have a morning, midday, and end of day huddle with the team members and specific groups. We're going over those key things. We're reviewing calls together. We're going through talk tracks. We're going through really the coaching and the soft skills, because pre-COVID, I had all of these processes dialed in. And so when the world changed overnight, we still had a team that knew exactly what their focus needed to be and how to get there, so that day in and day out, it's just a different scenery for them. They're now at home instead of in the office, but we're still focused on all of the key things. So I know I throw a ton at you guys. This is usually a longer session, but we wanted to make sure that if you were going to spend 20 minutes from us, you were going to get a lot of nuggets. And so we have some questions, it looks like. We'll jump in here and let's see. So one of the ones was, with so many many outbound, would be interesting to know how you are assigning accounts to each SDR. Is it geo? Is it industry? Is it A to Z? Is it et cetera? It's a good question. So the way it works, it's by segment. So we define segment by the number of sales employees they have. So for us, a commercial account is somebody that has 0 to 5 sales reps, 5 to 25 is corporate, so on and so forth. That's a really big indicator of success. And so the SDRs are within sort of those specific segments. Then we're using that data lake to take the most interesting accounts at the moment based on all of the things that we talked about. So new leadership changes, interesting things going on in the industry. So think COVID, where all of a sudden we saw, wins in online education or in companies like Zoom. We started to pivot and focus on those organizations. And so that is what's informing it. Those accounts are then divvied out to the SDRs. They get about 100, I believe. Actually, it's 30 at a given time. And then they will work those until they either deem them no longer working or they set the appointment. At that point, they kick it out to one of the group members. Let's see. Do we include sales ops as part of the sales team? We do, yeah. So we go by we do count them as a number, but we are looking at specifically the number of sellers. So it's sort of an added data point for us. The question was, I'm sorry, do you include sales operations employees as part of the sales team since they're users as well? So again, we measure it at the total size of the sales team, and then we're looking at actual number of sellers. Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions, and we're right against our time limit here. If you want to learn more about ZoomInfo, we have our virtual booth that's kicking off here in 5 minutes. I encourage you to go check that out, get some more questions that you have answered or need to have answered. You can also hit me up. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can test out our speed to lead, fill out a form on our website. And if one of my team members doesn't contact you in 90 seconds or less, please let me know so that I can have a talk with them. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time.